Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Rotoworld Football Podcast. My name is Josh Norris. The first round of the 2020 NFL Draft has just concluded, so we're going to have an extra special podcast for you. Not just a 3-person or 2-person, 4 people. Yes, it's a party here. First, Hayden Winks, John Daigle, and Patrick Doherty. Gentlemen, how are we? Are we well rested for a long night?
Really psyched to have 0 words written of an article. I have no one to blame but myself, though.
Okay, we talked about this. I did with Ian and Daigle on the early week episode that this was their first go round of the draft extravaganza via the CMS. John Daigle, how do you think it went? I know we already had to add some players on night 1, which typically is not the case.
I'm shaking my head right now, Josh, because our bosses are listening. So we're gonna avoid that and just say night 1 went as smooth as possible. How about that?
More clicks or less clicks than normal?
There were a few more clicks.
Yeah. Okay.
There were a few more clicks on social media as well. I think everything went as smooth as possible. If I can be company man.
Yeah, but the first sporting event in 2 years, it went really well.
Yeah.
Hayden, are you still young? You still any wrinkles because of tonight? You good?
No, everything went smoothly on my end. I mean, we got our player blurbs up there, and that was my main priority. I was a little bit scared that somebody was going to go completely out of bounds there. David Arnett came close, but we survived. He was on our radar.
The Raiders taking the guy on night 1 who just like skipped a bunch of postseason meetings. That could have been tricky, but thankfully.
Okay, so how today is going to go? I think the only way to do it is to go picks 1 through 32. It's not going to be an extended conversation in each one, but we will have pieces and nuggets of information of each pick. So let's go from the top. I don't really think much needs to be said about Joe Burrow going to the Cincinnati Bengals, Chase Young going to the Washington Redskins at number 2. I would even say Jeffrey Okudah, number 3 to the Detroit Lions. Yep. Then Andrew Thomas, number 4, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Obviously, Dave Gettleman gets his left tackle. He always talks about left tackle feet and was the first tackle off the board in a loaded draft class. Patrick Doherty, I want to come to you at pick number 5 because for months and months and weeks, there's been speculation that the Dolphins were going to take a quarterback. Would it be Herbert? Would it be Jordan Love? Would it be Tua? It ultimately was Tua Tagovailoa. So many blurbs were written on Rotoworld that not going to be deleted now, but we're kind of wasted. But that's what the draft process is for, right, Pat?
Yeah, the Dolphins took basically like an epic Lord of the Rings type journey to finally getting to like that had been the plan for so long. Then we thought they had screwed it up. Then, it worked out perfectly for Tua to fall in their lap, but they decided to commit to like months of smoke screening to like freak out their fans. And like I had some real Robespierre's like French revolutionaries in my Twitter mentions all week. Like they were basically ready to like storm the Bastille if the Dolphins had taken Justin Herbert. And there would have been like I have never seen more pre-draft angst over a potential pick than I did from Dolphins fans and Justin Herbert. So they kept the fan base happy with the pick that I thought they should make. I mean, to me, they played different positions almost, the difference between their games. I thought it was a pick they had to make.
The last podcast we did earlier this week, I remained bullheaded that it would be Herbert at number 5. Having said that, later that evening, it did come out. Probably the only actionable piece of information we received all week amid the clickbait reports was that Miami reportedly passed Tua's physicals. And perhaps that one piece of info is what led to this selection at number 5. Maybe it is because they had him in their sights all along. But Josh, I'm with you. I do think he's the better prospect. They made the right choice. But yeah, that's where it is now. So I still think it was a little bit shocking, at least.
Hayden, do you think it's the right decision?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer here. I think he's in a tier closer to Burrow than he is to Herbert. And I don't think Herbert's the worst prospect like some people are making him out to be. He's fine. Tua has like a lot of potential here. And I think all this smoke screen was kind of all for waste. I don't think the Chargers even had Tua over Herbert here. I heard that Herbert was really high on the board for multiple years. And I think that they were fine if the Dolphins were going to take 2 at 5 or move up, that they were perfectly content with Herbert at 6.
Tua just plays so fast. He thinks big. You know, like just when I compare Tua and Herbert, you have kind of like the consummate dink and dunker in Herbert. And you have Tua, his game speed in the SEC, you know, against the top competition, toughest schedule in the country, you know, it's just like is otherworldly for a college quarterback, in my opinion. And it's the way he's so fearless down the field. And I would have been heartsick for the Dolphins had they.
Pat, I can tell by your beard and your confidence in these statements that you spent some time in the lab, which I, respect. Yeah, I mean, to your point, Hayden, it is fascinating that we even got, you know, buzz that was pointing in the opposite direction. It seems like teams were just doing that for fun because, again, these teams were locked into the quarterbacks that we're going to take. And so it's just like wasted time that we all had for these last couple weeks. It was just totally
like they're just at home, bored and quarantined.
It was a good distraction. Yeah,
just leak another room or whatever.
Well, let's tag this on to number 6, which was Justin Herbert. You know, for so long, I had talked about Kim Jones's report during the combine that, you know, there was a player, a quarterback that one team had on their board at number 1 for 2 years straight. I thought it was the Chargers. Charles Robinson basically alluded to the fact that it was the New York Giants. Now I'm starting to think, Hayden, it might have been multiple teams that have thought Justin Herbert was the number 1 quarterback in 2019 and 2020, which is fascinating. But we also discussed that this Chargers team was set up to succeed now. And, you know, Tyrod Taylor going in there just caps the entire unit and the potential of it. Now they might have lifted the ceiling a little bit if the evaluation of Justin Herbert is solid.
Yeah, it's the arm strength that is just the one differentiator between Tyrod and Herbert. I think they're both mobile. I think their weapons are there for Herbert to go in there and have some success. I think if Tua was there, we'd be ready to go. I mean, the Chargers' entire roster is so clean throughout. I think Herbert, from a fantasy perspective, probably like around like QB 20 to 25 for me going in, just because, I mean, the pieces are there and he can scramble a little bit.
Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, the pieces are absolutely there. And as fun it is to say Tyrod Taylor would be an interesting quarterback to watch in this offense, he couldn't unlock them. I know, Josh, you have analysis that's negative on Justin Herbert, but at the very least, it's a strong arm quarterback who has similar traits on the ground, not in the air. He may miss a few receivers by 15 yards, but at least on the ground, he unlocks it.
I got to say, this thing about Justin Herbert, so he can get in really kind of extreme rhythm in the short passing game, you know, which is very good. You need to hit the layups, and he's got kind of a layup skill core in Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, and Austin Eckler. So he meshes well from that perspective, but he just makes so little impact down the field. And when I saw Justin Herbert live last fall and the past few falls, and when I rewatched the tape, aka YouTube cut-ups, you know, it was hard to not to get the feeling sometimes they were scheming around him. And do I really want my future franchise quarterback to be someone that didn't even look like the coaching staff in the Pac-12 had full faith in? I just don't think he can make enough impact down the field for him to be a franchise quarterback. And I you know, we've been joking about it, but I don't like, you know, just trashing a prospect. But he seems like a fascinating personality too. I just don't think this is going to be a pick they'll be happy with in 2 or 3 years.
Daigle, I'm just the host, so I'm not trying to turn into negative Norris over here. Don't drag me down there. Hayden, I want to bring back this to you. Do you think Anthony Lynn was lying here? Or do you think that Tyrod Taylor will see more starts in 2020 than Justin Herbert?
Well, I think this is really going to come down to how much training camp we actually get from Herbert. Obviously, learning a new playbook is going to be a little bit difficult for these rookies if they're not meeting in person here. But I would guess that Herbert's going to start more games than Tyrod Taylor is. I don't care what Anthony Lynn really says here. If you pick a player with a 6 overall pick, he's going to be starting 10-plus games.
I'm the host now. Josh, your thoughts on Herbert as a fit with the Chargers? That's it. Just a fit in this team.
I mean, I think it's the same as a fit with any team. You know, he's someone who inside of the structure of an offense obviously can operate, even though I would say some of his shorter passes were off target and unreasonably off target. With that said, you know, that is the most predictable part of a quarterback is what he brings you when everything is working around him. Now, this team still doesn't have a left tackle. Like they've just have bypassed the left tackle spot after trading Russell Okung.
For like a decade and a half. Even look, they've had a few interludes of kind of having a left tackle, but I feel like this has been a very long-term problem.
Which is fascinating. And the podcast viewers and listeners will know this. Like, I just have major questions that if Justin Herbert has it inside of him to have the confidence, like Pat does right now, speaking about these prospects, to really like lift people up around him, to make something happen outside of structure. And I don't know if that's something that you can learn, that you can grow into. And I have concerns that maybe his career goes in the way of Marcus Mariota. Like, I don't want to make comparisons right now, but, you know, I could see similarities if someone thought that.
He might have confidence like overall as a player, but he lacks confidence down the field. And it's just such a huge part of being a quarterback.
All right. Let's move on. Number 7, the Carolina Panthers go the super safe route and select Derrick Brown, the defensive tackle out of Auburn.
Let's hear it.
I'm sorry.
Well, this team just like they've spent so much, and we spent so much time on their offense. Right, the big deal for Christian McCaffrey, the signing of Robbie Anderson. Obviously, you have DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel to go along with the signing of Teddy Bridgewater. If you look at their defensive roster, they don't have 11 starters. They needed a starting corner, and a starting defensive tackle. They got one of those, but I just think it's a super safe selection. Hayden, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically coming down to a decision between Simmons and Derrick Brown. I'm sure they were trying to trade down, and that's probably would have been the best move that they could have done. But I don't know. Just getting a defensive tackle is just not very exciting unless his name is Aaron Donald.
At least he's going to develop on every single down. I mean, they lost Gerald McCoy, they lost Don Terry Poe. They literally just need bodies in there. So I don't know what he's going to amount to, but he will play every single snap.
I think he'll be a Pro Bowler. He'll be fine.
Well, I think he's good. Yeah, he's good. I just wonder if he has the ceiling of your Chris Jones, your Fletcher Cox, your Aaron Donald. And when I'm taking an interior defensive lineman in the top 10, I want them to have some juice, and I don't think he does. All right, number 8. The Arizona Cardinals and Steve Keim do not go with tackle. Instead, they go with Isaiah Simmons, safety/linebacker hybrid. And this is a player that Steve Keim has searched for since drafting Hassan Reddick. He basically described Isaiah Simmons 4 years earlier when drafting Reddick, and we know Reddick didn't work out. And Pat, you were talking about this in the chat. Deion Buchanan was an attempt at like this safety linebacker hybrid as well. And he's basically fizzled out of the league. Hopefully this one finally works out for Steve Keim.
It's just insane to see like how many different times this, Steve Keim won a draft.
He has a type.
Yeah, he does. It's crazy.
He has a type. All right, let's move on. We had a cornerback go to the Jacksonville Jaguars after they traded away Jalen Ramsey. After they traded away A.J. Boye, they go and get a Florida corner in C.J. Henderson. We had back-to-back tackles, Jedrick Wills to the Cleveland Browns. Hayden, I found it fascinating because he was a right tackle at Alabama, obviously on Tua's blind side. The Browns signed Jack Conklin to play that right tackle spot. So this is a bit of a projection here with Jedrick Wills moving over to the left side.
And some people have said he only played right tackle at Alabama to block Tua's blind side, but he also played right tackle exclusively in high school. So, I mean, maybe he can perform at left tackle. I don't know, but we haven't seen it at all in his career.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Is he's done that all the way back to high school. I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem. Of course, if he's not taking reps at a training camp this summer, is going to make it a little more difficult. But he's an athletic player, and he's got the mental aspect of it down. I'm sure the Browns did all their research, and I'm sure Wills is probably taking reps in practice at Alabama on the left side. I'm not that concerned here.
I'm sure Wills' worst is probably still better than Chris Hubbard. Apologies if his mother listens. So it'll be fine.
He does.
Number 11, we had our third tackle off the board before the first wide receiver. That was Mekhi Becton going to the New York Jets. You know, early in the process, a wide receiver was projected here. But based on – I mean, this is basically the Jets trying to have a Buffalo Bills type all season with their offensive line. I mean, signing 3 or 4 players that can play a variety of spots. Now you have Mekhi Becton who can play maybe on the left side, maybe on the right side. Just try to find that best 5 group to give Sam Darnold some stability up in that front 5. Pat, I want to turn to you for this. At number 12, the first wide receiver off the board, Henry Ruggs to the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, CeeDee Lamb got a lot of attention. Jerry Jeudy got a lot of attention. We'll get to them in a moment. But Pat, what does this say to you of Mike Mayock and John Gruden attaching a speed wide receiver to Derek Carr?
Well, first off, it says that ghosts are real. and that Al Davis has haunted the spirits of the Raiders front office and sideline. And, anytime you can make a receiver who wasn't even the number one receiver on his college team and never had 800 receiving yards in a season, the first receiver off the board, you've got to do it. This kind of player with Derek Carr, it's like when you need someone that you have to be creative with, aggressive with, that's not the kind of player you want to pair with Derek Carr. Obviously I like Henry Ruggs. I like watching Henry Ruggs play, but to me, he plays even smaller than his 5'11" frame. Kind of like Tariq Cohen-ish to me. He's more of like a Tariq Cohen than like a Percy Harvin to me. And I just don't know if I like the way that plays in the first round of the NFL draft. And he's so quick, obviously extremely explosive, but just for a variety of reasons, did not think this was a good use of the Raiders' number 12 pick.
I would argue it's a disastrous fit.
It is.
I want to hear from Hayden because I know he's been highest through this entire process on Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, so I've seen it a couple of times out there. I think the Raiders were 31st or 30th in percentage of their passes going down 20 yards down the field. And Henry Ruggs obviously can win that way, but a lot of his production at Alabama was actually underneath, on slants, on shallow crosses, and he was more of a yards after catch guy. Now, the question is, can he become the number one target over Tyrell Williams? And I think Henry Ruggs is a much better player than Tyrell Williams is.
For sure.
And I would think that Ruggs leads this team in targets. But I do think that he will be a better real-life asset than fantasy asset. But I wouldn't completely rule out Ruggs from being like a wide receiver 4 this year. I think the potential is there. Obviously, his production at Alabama isn't where you typically want to see it, but he had the second highest yards per target in the class last year, like 13.5. All of his receptions went for touchdowns. I mean, the guy is just so explosive. I don't want to be betting against him.
Yeah, to your point, Hayden, let's run through a couple stats of Henry Ruggs at Alabama. Only 4 catches last year of 20-plus yards. He's not just this 15-plus, 20-plus yard receiver that I think he's been termed. And you mentioned it. He averaged over 10 yards after the catch last year. What's funny is he only forced 4 missed tackles. That's not good, but it's because he doesn't have to force missed tackles. He just runs away from everyone.
Does it count if you run right around him? Is that a missed tackle?
I think if they're within 1 or 2 yards, then maybe it counts as one, but no one can catch this guy. And he has super underrated hands. He is someone who catches everything around him. So, he was being termed as Tyreek Hill, and even I made that comparison early, possibly in his career. But to me, that screams that at the very least, they can manufacture touches for him. And I think we kind of forget, Pat, that early last year, this Raiders offense was cooking a little bit. And I'm not going to say it's because Derek Carr is a good player. He's not. But their running back had an awesome season. And now you add an explosive playmaker onto it. John Gruden showed that he evolved a little bit. Should this be something that we should have some optimism for, Pat?
Anytime you're going to use your first round pick on someone where you have to kind of create the touches for them, I just think it's a disaster waiting to happen. And I agree with you. I think he's going to be more of a manufactured touch, underneath guy, at least early in his career, more than this downfield threat. Obviously, when I see him, I just saw Tariq Cohen. I did not see Tyreek Hill. I saw Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen can be a valuable NFL archetype to have in your offense, but I'm not using my first round pick on that.
I just absolutely dread the fit. I know, as you said, Hayden, a lot of his production on those manufactured routes, which terrifies me because that just means he seems like he'll be competing with Jason Witten and Hunter Renfrow now. An absolute.
Gosh, I can't believe we're stooping this low.
That's dark.
It's so explosive. We can't be comparing him to Jason Witten.
It's just an absolute mess. I'm terrified of this offense.
No. When you put Ruggs' film up next to Witten's, it's really hard to cover.
Yeah, both dad runners. Who knew? Okay, it's funny. We got 2 on each side here. And for everyone keeping score at home, yes, I did forget Josh Jacobs' name. It is 12:54 East Coast time.
Josh, I thought you were going to say I forgot Josh Jacobs' name. It is Josh Jacobs.
It is Josh Jacobs. All right, let's move on. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade up just 1 selection to get the 4th tackle on the board. that is Tristan Wirfs. We talked about it on our mock draft that if you have Tom Brady under contract for 2 years, you have to invest more in the offensive line. There was a reason why the team employed Dante Scarnecchia, pulled him out of retirement for so long. I'm talking about the Patriots here. There's a reason why the Patriots invest in the offensive line every single year. And as Tom Brady, looks at 40 behind him in his rearview mirror, he's going to have to stay inside of structure as often as possible. So Daigle, not only does this help the passing game, possibly, with Tristan Wirfs having experience on the left side and the right side in college, it's going to help the running game as well.
And I know people had discussed wanting to add another receiver to this offense, but where would anyone else fit? We are going to have a hard enough time in fantasy parsing the options they have right now. So just imagine another wide receiver in the slot. This is a 1 year window. 2 years is being kind. It's you have to go all out right now. So it only made sense that it was one of the tackles defaulting them. And it's as simple as that.
Pat, we haven't had a podcast since Rob Gronkowski has been traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pat, what was your reaction to that deal?
To the Rob Gronkowski deal?
Yeah. I know we're getting pessimistic, Pat, tonight. Basically at every single turn of this podcast. So I'm trying to elicit some positivity out of you here with Gronk.
Well, Gronk, so this kind of the rate stats kind of belied Gronk's film in 2018. He looked several steps slower, but he was still a tight end averaging 15 or 16 yards per catch and still kind of put the offense on his back in the AFC Championship game and Super Bowl. So it's kind of what do you trust more there? Kind of slow Frankenstein Gronk for a lot of the season, or still solid numbers at the end of the year Gronk and playoff Gronk. And I usually don't buy the argument so-and-so, missed the whole year. Now they'll have fresh legs. But Gronk is still only going to be 31. Talk about someone, if anyone could use an extended rest, as someone with a torn ACL, multiple back problems, freaky arm injury. So I think Gronk, he probably wasn't ready to retire. I think Gronk, the problem is he's not going to be top 3 tight end Gronk, as we know. But Gronk can probably still challenge for tight end 8 to tight end 12 Gronk. Just so much more target competition than he had those final few years in New England. But I thought for a 4th round pick, you take that gamble.
Yeah.
I've still been doing loads of best ball drafts, and I will say in the past 48 hours, he has become the tight end 7 in the Austin Hooper and Evan Ingram range, whatever that means.
I'm 31 years old, and I would like an extended rest. So
would love a year off.
All right, let's move to pick number 14. The San Francisco 49ers, again, drop back 1 spot, pick up a 4th round pick along the way, and draft basically DeForest Buckner's replacement in Javon Kinlaw. I put out a mock after free agency and put Kinlaw here, and 49ers fans called me lazy for it. And it's just funny because sure, maybe if you were just replacing the position, then that might be lazy, but you're getting an awesome player at a position where you're losing a fantastic player in DeForest Buckner. I think Kinlaw has the most upside of any interior disruptor.
Awesome players are bad.
Yeah, right? It's hey, this was the strength of our team. It was one of the reasons we got to the Super Bowl. Let's just not try to replace it with another really good prospect. But that's what the 49ers did. That's what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan did.
And it was reported his medicals are cleared as well. Every GM considered it wear and tear, so he's good to go.
Hey, and I want to turn to you here at pick number 15. The Denver Broncos stick here, take the 2nd wide receiver off the board. That is Alabama's Jerry Jeudy. Cortland Sutton had a fantastic 2019. Noah Fant had his moments of positivity, a lot of negatives as well. We added Melvin Gordon in free agency, and now it's on Drew Lock. But what are the Broncos getting here, Hayden, with Jerry Jeudy?
Well, I think they found their slot receiver here. Jerry Jeudy split his time between outside and the slot at Alabama, and I think Cortland Sutton's going to be the outside receiver. They're going to find some wide receiver too, and then Jerry Judy's going to roam in the slot. I think it's a decent fit. The targets will be there for Drew Lock, and basically there's no excuses for Drew Lock. They're gonna figure out if he's gonna be the franchise quarterback this year. I think Noah Fant is pretty solid. You have Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay. There we go.
Hayden, you have no excuses. It is a 3-hour time difference for you.
That guy Yeah,
It is only 10 p.m. over there. It's
I
1 a.m. here.
I was distracted by his hair. That's the only thing I can think of.
No excuses.
But yeah, no, the offense should be good. Jerry Jeudy's will be in conversation for that wide receiver one in rookie drafts. He'll just roam in the slot.
It comes down to Drew Lock. Cortland Sutton, as great of a season he had, was the wide receiver 14 with Joe Flacco and finished inside the top 38 only one game in Drew Lock's 5 starts. Noah Fant, he saw a target share under 10% in Drew Lock's 5 starts. It literally comes down to the quarterback. So no matter what I think of the player, again, it's a disastrous fit for the wide receiver.
I don't know. Here's what I'll say about this. I consider myself a Drew Lock expert. I am a Mizzou alum. I saw every single one of Drew Lock's college starts, and
I'm laughing, Pat, because you have been so negative on this podcast until this very moment. Until Drew Lock pops up, and you have the biggest smile on your face. Like,
and it's still early, I should say.
You could not wait on this moment.
Here's what I'm going to say. We all know about the risk-reward with Drew Lock, and that the risk probably outweighs the reward. But if you're going to surround Drew Lock with a certain kind of receiver or pass-catching talent, you need explosive players who can make plays down the field. He is not a dink and dunk passer at all. He is weirdly inaccurate at the short to intermediate areas and weirdly accurate down the field. Jerry Jeudy is another player that can make explosive plays down the field, is very strong on the ball. And if I'm going to surround Drew Lock with receiver, like a certain kind of receiver, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Noah Fant, it's a good way. If you're going to insist on building around Drew Lock, which again, not recommended, they are doing it the right way.
I went through some of the stats for Henry Ruggs. I should probably do the same thing here for Jerry Jeudy. He actually had more deep catches than Henry Ruggs did. 9 deep catches last year for Jerry Jeudy. 49 catches out of the slot last year, 702 yards. 7 drops, Hayden. Not quite good from someone who you deem as a reliable pass catcher, but he did have 15 missed tackles after the catch last year.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy led the FBS in 15-plus yard receptions over the last 2 seasons. He wins in the slot, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to be winning downfield as well.
All right, let's keep it moving. You always hear best player available this, best player available that. Wasn't quite the best player available here, I don't think, for the Atlanta Falcons. They had a need heading into it at cornerback, despite what Dan Quinn might wanted to sell us. So at pick number 16, out of Clemson, the Atlanta Falcons select cornerback A.J. Terrell after obviously cutting Desmond Trufant during free agency. But then at 17, it was actually one of those moments, Daigle, where I was typing out a tweet being like, the first 16 picks all fill a need. Imagine that. Then we get to pick 17. Wide receiver certainly is not a need for the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, this is only turning a strength even stronger, adding CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma to a wide receiver group of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. What say you, John Daigle?
Who needs defense when you can just try to outscore everyone? That's what I say. This is so good for Dak. As we know, Michael Gallup still has 2 years left on his contract, and his deal, when it comes up, may arguably have to end up somewhere as Amari Cooper's deal, because he's been so good in his first 2 years in the league. But right now, it was either Ventel Bryant or Ced Wilson from the slot on day one if they went in with
Tony
that receiving core. Or quote-unquote Tony Pollard, because Ian's apparently here. But now it is CeeDee Lamb, who I personally thought was the best receiver in this class, who led the nation in yards per route run from the slot last year in Oklahoma. I mean, it's a dream come true for Dak Prescott, if anything. This defense still can stop absolutely no one. It's nightmarish. But again, that's what we look for in fantasy, because they have to put their foot on the gas every single game now. It's just a great fit for Dak. And I keep saying Dak because now CeeDee Lamb has to fight among these targets with Amari Cooper and Gallup. So it probably knocks them down a peg. We have to think more when it's not 1 a.m. in the morning on this. But Dak is the one who soars to the top.
My first thought was just feeling bad for Michael Gallup. I love Michael Gallup. The progression he made last year was just amazing. Such a great young player. And then I was sad for CD. He's my favorite. Not sad. It's great for the Dallas Cowboys. It's good for CeeDee Lamb because, it's going to be a super productive offense. He's going to get a lot of national media attention. But it's just, yeah, CeeDee Lamb was my favorite receiver prospect. That I came down on the CD side of the CD Jerry Jeudy debate. It's just so the way he changes gears. He's just man, his stop-start action. I just love it so much, and I wanted him to go somewhere where he would be needed for huge targets immediately. And this isn't that situation, but he won't be.
Yeah, like we can feel bad for individual production here, but Hayden, if this team wins, everyone's going to be happy, and this is a step in the right direction towards winning.
Oh, definitely. And I'm not going to even rule out that CeeDee Lamb doesn't emerge as like the wide receiver one in this offense down the stretch this year. He is so dang good. 15 yards per target last year. I think he's much better than Michael Gallup, and Michael Gallup's a good player. And I think he can end up competing with Amari Cooper as their top guy. We're looking at the last part of the season here. He's that good of a player.
You're looking at when they played Tavon Austin over Amari Cooper in Week 17?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. But the other side note here is Jerry Jones made an awful decision here because he didn't extend Dak Prescott before this pick. Mm-hmm. Dak Prescott's going to be worth $50 million a year after the season. He's going to throw for about 8,000 yards.
I know we wanted more targets for CeeDee Lamb, but it's going to come down to efficiency, and they can absolutely be one of the most efficient offenses in the league.
And this offense was quite good last year in spots, especially when Kellen Moore was allowed to operate a Kellen Moore offense. And that was with Randall Cobb in the slot. Now you get to rotate guys like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, because it's not going to just be one guy's located in the slot, two are on the outside. Like, they're going to be moved around. I mean, CD has experience in the slot, 25 receptions last year, 605 yards in the slot. But then he's also this yards after catch demon, despite his size. He forced 26 missed tackles last year, averaged 11 yards per reception after the catch. That is ludicrous for a college player who's over, 6 feet tall? I mean, he's an unbelievable player. And to me, this widens the window to win as long as Dak Prescott is the one operating it. But right now, and, they can keep Dak on like a Kirk Cousins type situation as much as they want to with franchise tag after franchise tag. But how do you not think ahead here and be like, okay, we're going to make Dak even better, so why not pay him now before we have to do it even more?
We talk about Carolina perhaps being a sneaky offense to watch just because they have to throw the ball every single down. Their defense is so bad. Like, now imagine if Carolina's entire offense was beefed up and it's the Cowboys instead, who have proven they can be successful, and they just added arguably the best offensive player in the draft. It's insanity for fantasy football.
It was, I mean, all I heard was that if K'Lavon Chaisson was on the board, he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy. Mm-hmm. Maybe this team just didn't think that CeeDee Lamb would be on the board. And they certainly are banking, like we talked about, for one of Aldon Smith and Randy Gregory to hit on the other side of that.
They had one interview with CeeDee Lamb. That's it. Talked to him one time because they figured he wouldn't be there.
I love it. I love Jerry knowing that, like, look, we got a chance right now, even when they didn't make the playoffs last year. Like, look, and maybe he even said this. I could imagine Jerry on his yacht being like, look, our Paso DVOA was one of the top in the league last year. Let's make it even better. Jerry's really into DVOA now. That's what I think. 2020 is here. Okay, let's move on. Pick number 18, the Miami Dolphins get their left tackle for Tua Tagovailoa. Hayden Winks, it's your guy, Austin Jackson from USC.
Yeah, fight on. I don't hate this pick just because I don't think Austin Jackson's like some elite talent by any means. I think he can get there. But the whole thing is the Dolphins aren't trying to win a Super Bowl this year or next year, or probably even in 2022. And that's when I think we're going to see the best of Austin Jackson. He's the youngest player in this draft. He's flashed at times. Last year's tape wasn't that good, but the time horizon and when Austin Jackson's going to peak kind of match up here.
And I believe they still have 2 second-round picks, and I wouldn't be surprised if they double up on offensive line with one of those. Pat mentioned at the top, at pick number 19, the Las Vegas Raiders select the 4th corner in this class. Yes, Damon Arnett out of Ohio State, who I don't know if he was in like the top 70 picks of Arif Hassan's consensus compilation board, but here we are. He's a first rounder at number 19. Number 20, the Jacksonville Jaguars basically replaced Yannick Ngakoue, with Yannick Ngakoue still being on the roster, and K'Lavon Chaisson. After Josh Allen was a first-round pick last year, the team just loves juice among pass rushers. Pat, I want to turn to you here at pick number 21, because the Philadelphia Eagles, Justin Jefferson is on the board. That's the player that was mocked to the Eagles so often throughout this draft process as a receiver who can create separation and get open Carson Wentz. Instead, they go for explosion, and that is wide receiver Jalen Reagor out of TCU.
Yeah, and we had a big debate in the Slack, didn't we, about Jalen Reagor versus Justin Jefferson. And Reagor he was a tough eval, especially tough when your eval is mostly just like 3 or 4 YouTube cut up videos, like me.
I love the honesty.
But so fast, so explosive. But it was bizarre 2019 film, and like even just like watching, I probably watched like 20 to 25 total minutes of film, and even on that, you saw like just bizarre like on-field like lack of commitment sometimes. He putting out like a truly atrocious quarterback play, and maybe that was coming into it, but. So definitely a risk reward there, but I love the big playability, and he made a few circus catches. I just love the big playability. I love the explosion. I always love the speed, and I'll get to Justin Jefferson in a minute, but I don't think Justin Jefferson has those things. So I thought this was the right pick over Jordan Matthews 2.0.
Hayden, what'd you think?
Yeah, I gave Jalen Reagor a second-round grade here, and he's definitely going to be one of the players I'm going to rewatch once the draft's done. I thought he was going to be like a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for a team, but I mean, obviously the Eagles have a massive gap here with the receiver class. So, yeah, Jalen Reagor is going to be much higher than in my fantasy rankings than what I actually viewed him as a prospect. I thought he was more like a DK Metcalf light, but obviously the Eagles think differently.
I actually did a better mock in post free agency than I did yesterday, which is funny. And I had Reagor going here at 21, I said. Look, if we look at what the Eagles did prior to the 2019 season, that their big splash move was adding Deshaun Jackson, right? Like they put all their eggs in the Deshaun Jackson basket, and it worked out in week 1. Then he got hurt and didn't play again. And I feel like if that was it and like the rest of the season simulated like no other injuries, people would be heading into this offseason saying, okay, they need to find a direct replacement or someone with a similar skill set to Jalen Reagor. But because of the other injuries, Daigle, that they had at wide receiver, and basically Greg Ward occupying 90% of their receptions in the final 4 weeks of the season, then it turned into, we'll take any wide receiver. So any type works. But I think that they are looking for a certain type, speed and explosion, downfield playmaking, and Jalen Reagor fits that.
We talk about draft capital being important, and the Eagles drafting him in the first round, number 21 overall. We talk about opportunity being important, and the Eagles are looking to trade Alshon Jeffrey, but can't since he had Liz Frank surgery. We talk about just explosive receivers, and as we know, the knock is in his final year at TCU, 6.9 yards per target. Yes, that's scary, but true freshman quarterback Matt Stugan under center, sort of tanking him along with them in that offense. And in those 3 seasons at TCU, Reagor still accounted for 35% of the team's receiving yardage, 40% of their receiving scores as someone who soaked up opportunity. So I still think he's an explosive guy who just walks into a day one start, especially because we think he can play from the slot and perimeter no matter what they do with Jeffrey.
Do we think the Eagles are done here, Pat? Do you think that they need to continue to add more to this group? Because, again, it's Alshon who's declining. I guess it's what you can get out of Deshaun Jackson, and then you have, Mr. Steady and Greg Ward. Obviously, it's 2 tight ends that are fantastic in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, but do you think that the Eagles could continue to add more here?
Again, you don't want to be in a situation again where you have Greg Ward as your late season crunch time number 1 receiver. Alshon Jeffrey, on the wrong side of 30 with extremely concerning injury. Deshaun Jackson is my age. So yeah, they could definitely not be done. Jalen Reagor, just his acceleration, that just popped off the page on the film, which makes no sense as an analogy. But you mentioned adding Deshaun last year. Wasn't it 2 years ago they added Mike Wallace? Like they've been chasing.
Yep.
This has been an element missing from their offense because at the end of the day, last year Carson Wentz took kind of a lot of heat early in the year for kind of not carrying the offense. But what he did at the end of the season with Greg Ward as his number 1 receiver was just astounding. And they were so close to having a complete offense, and they don't have a complete offense without this deep threat or explosive play threat. And this is like their latest attempt at it. And I think it is an admirable, good attempt they needed to make at it.
You just have to look at these guys and value them more that can find ways onto the field. And Reagor already has an easy path to opportunity, but you can manufacture his touches shallow if you do think he's a shallow threat. And then also he'll probably likely fight his way as a kick and punt returner as well. So I just think he can, even at like 3 carries per game as a wide receiver, is in his range of outcomes.
I'm just looking at these numbers, and like we talked about how great Jerry Jeudy's and CeeDee Lamb's were, and Henry Ruggs had some. It's just a lot of average here for Jalen Reagor, but Hayden, I think a lot of that is just because of the quarterback he played in, the situation he played in, and maybe wasn't used ideally. Like manufacturing more touches for him might happen in the NFL than he did at the college level. All right, let's move on. We don't have to go too much further, because the immediate pick right after this one was Justin Jefferson. We know that the Minnesota Vikings traded away Stephon Diggs for a first-round pick, and in their first chance to replace him, they did. Hayden, Justin Jefferson, well, let me start by saying this. Stephon Diggs leaves 94 targets on the table. Last year, Justin Jefferson saw over 130 at LSU. It wouldn't be a surprise if Jefferson gets 94 his rookie year and then some, and gets all of what Stephon Diggs leaves behind.
Yeah, opportunity is clearly there. He's going to walk right into that wide receiver 2 role right behind Adam Thielen. And the one thing you have to factor in with the Vikings is not the targets just from last year. This defense got a lot worse. There lost a lot of big pieces out there. And I think Jefferson is going to be right in there with the wide receiver 1 of this rookie wide receiver class. And man, he was just so dang good at LSU last year. And he surprised with the 4.43 speed. I think Rotopad has some concerns here about his overall speed, but the dude just made so many plays. And when Joe Burrow is looking at you constantly over and over and over again, I'm going to be bullish.
Pat, what did the 25 minutes of tape on the page show you for this guy?
Well, to me, so Justin Jefferson, obviously, it was more than that because I saw a lot of LSU. So this is weird. There's so many disconnects here for me because watching LSU last year, I was extremely impressed with Justin Jefferson. And then, knowing what I just had seen watching college football casually, and then, his insane stats. I love college production, over 1,500 yards. And when I saw his 40 time, I just frankly couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is amazing. This guy is going to be just a complete prospect. But then when I did double back and rewatch, what I saw, it didn't match my memory and it didn't match the 40 time to me. And it reminded me a lot of what I said this in the Slack. I've tweeted it too, I think. What I saw with N'Keal Harry last year, just when I watched his film, when I watched his highlights, I was just always shocked at how little separation there was. And he was open a lot over the middle of the field. That's what happens when you play opposite Jamar Chase, one of the greatest college offenses in NCAA history. But I didn't see what I was expecting to see. And I saw someone that I think is going to have trouble separating at an NFL level. And there's a lot of data points working against me, and I know I could be wrong, but I just thought what I saw didn't match what I saw on the page and what I was expecting to see.
What I do know is he only ran 19% of his routes from the slot in 2018. He came back in 2019 last year, ran 78% of his routes from the slot, and that led to the LSU record 111 receptions. He can play both, I believe, efficiently. I don't know, but I do know he can step into the slot in day one, and they don't have competition at that position. There is literally no one who can hang with Jefferson as the third wideout.
How dare you talk about Chad Beebe? Is he still on the Vikings?
He is still there, yeah.
But why are you even saying third wide receiver? I mean, it's second wide receiver, if not first wide receiver.
No one can hang with him behind Adam Thielen. Nope.
Not at all.
How dare you say that about BC Johnson?
Well, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this team, the majority of their snaps, have 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers in the field instead of 11 personnel. And Pat, to your point, there is some substance there because while he's being termed as a separation creator, and I think that Jefferson is that, he also had a ton of contested catches last year, 12 contested catches. He was dominant on them, however.
He was.
92% contested catch conversion rate. So, Pat, there's a difference between slot receivers who, are late career Randall Cobb in some ways, where, they have the space manufactured for them, versus guys who can win after the catch, which Jefferson can. He broke 25 missed tackles last year, and win contested. He can do both. And I want to add, to close out my point, that I believe I heard Daniel Jeremiah say that Gary Kubiak had Jefferson ranked as the number 1 wide receiver in this class. So that is 2 straight years where basically Gary Kubiak gets his guy because in his year off said that Garrett Bradbury was his crush during October of his time in semi-retirement at home.
And we know what that offense prefers to do. They threw the 3rd fewest pass attempts in the entire league last year.
Yep.
Having said that, it could change because their defense did get worse overnight.
And I'll just, my closing thought, that was the part I left out. He was in a ton of contested catch situations, but he always made the contested catch. But to me, that's just a hard way to make an NFL living. Like, unless you're going to go like full Anquan Bolden, and we'll just see. Clearly, I'm either going to be spectacularly wrong or spectacularly right on this one. So.
All right, let's keep it moving. Pick number 23. I believe the Los Angeles Chargers traded up with the Patriots here to select linebacker Kenneth Murray. Oh, Hayden Winks, this is a team that has tried to fill linebacker in the past. And Denzel Perryman, a few other names. They even signed Nick Vigil this offseason. Why would they trade up for a linebacker here, do you think?
Well, I think it's just an awful decision. I think Kenneth Murray's an okay player. He's not some spectacular player. He's a decent starter. The big thing is who's going to play left tackle for this team. And I thought they were for sure trading up to grab a Josh Jones from Houston or somebody else that could go plug and play, start from the day one. But now they don't have a 2nd-round pick. They're going to be drafting some developmental project in like 3rd or 4th round to play left tackle this year. That's my biggest concern.
But it's not like they drafted a quarterback at number 6 overall, so who cares about left tackle? It's fine.
All right, let's move on. Speaking of offensive linemen, I would say in somewhat of a surprise move because, and just looking at the Saints ahead of the draft, they obviously don't have, holes on their roster. They're one of the most complete rosters in the NFL, but what they did here is they recognized that they still have this window to win with Drew Brees for this year, and they tried to maybe not improve, but just strengthen that interior of the offensive line, adding Cesar Ruiz here at pick number 24. He was a center at Michigan. Obviously, rookie Eric McCoy took that position over last year. I do wonder, Pat, if this is the end of the road for Larry Warford, and I looked up prior to this podcast that they can save about $8 million by cutting or trading Larry Warford right now.
Yeah, it's certainly pointing that direction because I don't know the Saints' overall cap situation. I just know it's always kind of up against the limit. So this would seem to be telegraphing that move.
Well, they just create money out of nowhere, it seems like, every year anyway. So
they are the best.
Easy approach to that.
They and the Steelers.
Okay, then we get to pick number 25. Hayden, I want to bring it back to you here because I thought that with pick number 31, it was easy money for the San Francisco 49ers to trade out because at that point, well, prior to the draft, they didn't have any picks until the 5th round. We knew that they got one in a short trade back here with the Buccaneers, but then they go and use that to move up to pick number 25, select a wide receiver. First, I want to get your thoughts on the player. It's Brandon Aiyuk out of Arizona State. We know that Deebo Samuel was a monster after the catch last year in the NFL. Well, Brandon Aiyuk had similar production at the college level after the catch as well.
Yeah, and Brandon Aiyuk was a late bloomer, transfer from a junior college. He was a wide receiver 3 at Arizona State as a junior last year and then fully broke out. And he's kind of a straight line player. He's not like exceedingly fast. He ran the 40 in 4.5 seconds. A lot of yards after the catch on screens and can win vertically. So I think the fit makes a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk. I think he's going to be more of a wide receiver 2 more than a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. But they're all in, just trading it. I thought they were going to trade out, like you said, and they traded up here. So it's Brandon Aiyuk as the wide receiver 2 behind Deebo Samuel.
I don't know if the world is ready to watch Garoppolo throw for 9 yards per attempt on a -1 average depth of target, but it's happening because this offense is going to be fun. We know in 2018, Aiyuk played second fiddle to N'Keal Harry. Just 44 targets to N'Keal Harry's 114 on that same offense as a JUCO transfer, and then caught for nearly 1,200 yards the following year when he was the number 1 target as Harry left and got drafted by the Patriots in the 1st round. But averaging just over 11 yards after the catch, an elite number. They can use Deebo Samuel, who led the league in rushing among wide receivers last year, and Aiyuk to make, and Kittle, by the way, to just make this insane offense that my brain is melting, even trying to figure out ways to cover it. It's going to be so much fun.
How dare you forget Kyle Juszczyk in there as well.
Hey, don't forget Jalen Hurd.
Tight end Jalen Hurd.
Pat, speak on the decision to not trade out and acquire more picks. Why do you think that they recognized, hey, we can get 2 first-round caliber players here instead of trying to have more darts and take advantage of the draft?
Probably because the windows in the NFL tend to not be nearly as big as you think they are, and maybe they're just acknowledging that reality and that they're in a situation where they need to be all in on every season. They're certainly all in on this skill type, but kind of like yak, like slasher types. And Hayden alluded to it. He's definitely more quick than fast. I mean, he is very quick. He's very shifty. I mean, he looks like small out there, but he's also like tough as nails. And they're all in on this they're all in on this off. Like John laid it out perfectly. They're going like all in on this like low average depth of target yak offense.
Doesn't that tell you what they think of their quarterback?
It does.
Yes.
And look, it's not going to show up in the production because the production is going to be there. But if you read between the lines, drafting now a player who had 25 screen receptions last year, who, receivers get criticized all the time for not running routes coming out of college. That's certainly –
It's like every receiver now.
Right. But this is a player, along with what they drafted last year, who is best with the ball in his hands near the line of scrimmage. You just have to have a quarterback get the ball to them near the line of scrimmage in open space accurately to let them do what they do. So, again, Hayden, it's basically Kyle Shanahan defining what he thinks his evaluation is of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, and the last thing here is Brandon Aiyuk. We talked about Jalen Reagor struggling with a freshman quarterback. Brandon Aiyuk also had a true freshman quarterback in the Pac-12. Those defenses in the Pac-12 and the Big 12 aren't very good. You look at the difference between production between Jalen Reagor and Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe we can read into that a little bit.
And remember, Aiyuk just had core surgery on April 7th, and they still traded up for him essentially 2 weeks later, which means not concerned. Not only that, but covet him as well.
At least I won't be wasting best ball shares on Dante Pettis this offseason. Let's move on.
Don't speak too soon.
Pick number 26, immediately after this. I believe the Green Bay Packers traded into the slot. And look, the draft certainly was not spicy at the top. In fact, it was quite chalk with very few trades. I got spicy here at pick number 26, Patrick Daugherty. Because, oh man, we have quarterback Jordan Love, who – there's so many different avenues we can go with this, right? One, let's look at the Aaron Rodgers angle first. Does this not cap his time with the Green Bay Packers to 2 or 3 seasons, and that's it? Because you're not going to wait on a quarterback for 4 or 5 years in this NFL after just trading up to pick number 26 and selected.
No, I don't even know where to begin with this. First off, like a succession plan – like that's not important when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. I know like you can easily convince yourself that it is, and the Packers are like kind of exhibit A for having a succession plan at quarterback for how seamlessly things went from Favre to Rodgers. But what you need to be going – Aaron Rodgers, they just went to the NFC Championship game. They need to be all in on every season, just like what we saw from the 49ers. They should have got Aaron Rodgers a weapon. He said before the draft it had been 15 years before they took a skill player in the first round. Wouldn't that be nice? Instead, they take his heir apparent. It makes no sense from like a morale standpoint and angering Aaron Rodgers. It makes no sense from a team building standpoint. They need to be all in on 2020. Why would a team with a future Hall of Famer quarterback in his twilight years be worried about 2025? It makes no sense. And then just why would it be Jordan Love? Like you can see why teams fell in love with him. I think more than anything, teams fall in love like his confidence and his moxie. Like he's so confident in the pocket. Like he kind of never gets rattled, never panics. But how important is that if you're not a good thrower of the football? And he was not that in college. He just so I don't even think he has that great of an arm. It's not like he has a bad arm, but this pick fried my brain basically.
I agree with you, but I'm more or less just here for your takes. I'm absolutely
I'm loving it.
I am loving it. I just want an hour of this.
I'm loving it. Look, this is a team that last offseason said, okay, we liked our late round receivers good enough to not draft or add any wide receivers for you, Aaron Rodgers. Then you overachieve and win 13 games somehow. And then you go into this offseason, and the only skill position player that they've added really so far is Devin Funchess, who missed all of 2019. Like, Hayden, I've been very into seeing what the Patriots are going to do at the quarterback situation, but what follows that now is seeing angry Aaron Rodgers take the field because, I mean, they are basically looking beyond the window that they have right now. And we talked about the Cowboys buying into their window, the Saints buying into their window. The Packers aren't doing that, and I don't understand it.
And they can't get out of his contract. Even if they trade him, there's just a big sunk cost. I think in the next 2 years, I mean, they are stuck with Aaron Rodgers. And I would be very nervous if I was the general manager to draft Aaron Rodgers' replacement here. I have no idea what the plan is. I don't think Jordan Love could start in a year from now, 2 years from now. I'm not in on Jordan Love at all. And it's just got to be so frustrating for Rodgers. He thinks he's finally going to get one of these receivers, and rightfully so, in the first round, and then he gets his backup. It's a disaster over there.
I mean,
But Alan Lazard is floating those best
Daigle.
numbers. He's alive,
No, he's
buddy.
not.
He's alive and well.
End the podcast.
I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron deleted Alan Lazard's number tonight, like just in frustration. Like, I mean, how upset must that guy be?
Is there a chance he doesn't show up, like, realistically?
What's crazy is that Jordan Love, like, you know, you can make excuses for him, right? Like, he lost a lot of his pass catchers. He changed, obviously, coaches during his final season at Utah State. Okay, now he's going to a team that is with new pass catchers, and he's going to a team with new coaches. And sure, he gets to wait 2 or 3 years, but, like, at what point is using – like, this is so different, Pat, going back to your point, than taking Patrick Mahomes when you have Alex Smith, right? Because Alex Smith had a ceiling to him, and he was coming to the end of his contract, and your window was not as shiny as it could be with the Patrick Mahomes if he hits. At best, Jordan Love is going to be what Aaron Rodgers brings you right now. So, like, why are you eliminating these few years potentially of your window?
Yeah, it makes no, like, I understand, like, wanting your team to be built for perpetual success. But in this situation, like this is something you milk for all it's worth, and you go all in on every year you have remaining of Aaron Rodgers, and it just makes no sense. And if you're going to do it, at least do it with a good player, for goodness sakes.
Yep. And it now makes 17 consecutive years that they haven't drafted an offensive skill player in the first round.
Yeah. Well, they just did.
What'd you say?
This is an offensive skill player, is it
Okay,
not?
well, skill player surrounding a quarterback. How about
Well,
that?
and like we've all said, like we all have alluded to this in different ways, it's going to be at least 2 more years of Aaron Rodgers starting, kind of regardless. So then what? You get 3 years of Jordan Love's rookie. I just don't know what the calculus.
Aaron
And again-
Nadler, who is locked in, like he tweeted the moment it happened, and he said, like, make no mistake, this is so Jordan Love can take over. And he didn't mention the year, but he did mean like this kid is taking over for Rodgers.
And once again, it's just such a different situation than what the Chiefs did with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank goodness we got back to normalcy at pick number 27, because the Seattle Seahawks, in previous years, they've taken a first-round pick to run the football. Well, now they took a first-round pick to stop the run. This was Texas Tech linebacker Jordan Brooks, who's obviously explosive. But Hayden, his numbers and metrics and analytics and coverage were a complete disaster.
Yeah, he's a good player if he's stopping the run. If he's a bad player when he's in coverage, it's as simple as that. And that's the most Seahawks thing. They always want to be in on the run, running it on offense, defending the run on defense. It just makes no sense. Yeah, I think he was like my 70th player. And when I was writing it, I was like, he's a good player like in this role. He's going to compete for run stopping and first round. So.
And it's one where I think a positive comparison would have been KJ Wright. And now he's going to a team with KJ Wright on it. Maybe it's a team thinking, okay, we have declining players on overpriced contracts in like a KJ Wright. And obviously they played Michael Kendricks last year. Let's replace them when we have the opportunity. I just don't think you draft that type in the first round. All right. We had another linebacker. The Baltimore Ravens at number 28 selected Patrick Queen. A lot of us projected this one. This was a team last year that spent so much time at cornerback and obviously safety with Earl Thomas They kind of got away from that building from the interior out. They changed that this offseason with Calais Campbell and
that guy.
Derek Wolfe. Yes, and now you have Patrick Queen. So, yeah, there's your interior of your defensive line after Derrick Henry ran all over you in the playoffs. Speaking of Derrick Henry, Tennessee Titans at pick number 29, Isaiah Wilson is their plug-and-play right tackle to replace Jack Conklin. Just a mauler of a man. There aren't any skill position players left until we get to pick number 32. So I'll quickly run through 30 and 31. The Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores is going all in with his coverage. We know that Xavier Howard was already there. Then you go out and sign Byron Jones in free agency. Now you have Noah Igbinoghene. I butchered that so bad. From Auburn. It's fine.
We'll have to work on it.
Better than I would have done.
Josh, we'll get it right, but it's taken you how many years to get my last name right? So I don't know if you'll ever get it right.
Pat, quickly, your breakdown on Noah.
Yeah. What did the 25 minutes of tape on paper say, Pat?
Slot. I think I heard one of them say he's going to be in the slot or something. Yeah, slot guy.
I think I heard one of them say he's going to be in the slot.
All right. To me, it's just fascinating to see these teams really, really invest in secondary over pass rush and defensive line. And it's, I think, a real change across the league. 31, again, was another cornerback. Major need for the Vikings. Jeff Gladney out of TCU. Let's close it off here, John Daigle, with pick number 32. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. First, to you nerds that say the Chiefs would never take a running back in the first round, shove it. Shove it, nerds. Also, second, Ben Fennell was on this podcast a couple weeks ago and had a comparison of Brian Westbrook for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. John Daigle, how fitting. He lands with Andy Reid, who obviously coached Brian Westbrook for quite some time.
I have adrenaline for this podcast only because of this pick. For reference, Jonathan Taylor, who has the best athletic profile among the running backs in his class, had 8 drops on 50 targets last year, whereas Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 3 drops on 64 targets and a heightened production in 55 catches in that Tigers national championship offense. Like, the ceiling for Helaire was training and developing to be a 3-down player. But how about we just take the best receiving running back in this class and arguably of the last 5 years and put him with the best quarterback in the league, and let's just see what they can do. It is magic, especially given the draft capital in the first round. Edwards-Helaire is far and away now, should be the number 1 running back in fantasy from this draft.
I was surprised to see the Chiefs go this route too. I was happy to see them go this route too. Like you said, he's like instant offense as a pass catcher. I kind of when I like evaluated Clyde and watched him last year, I was kind of worried.
Let me get my pen out.
No, I was kind of worried. He would get typecast as a pass catching only back. But the first round investment suggests that will not be the case. Talk about a dude who's like disappears into the pile for like a variety of reasons and then emerges with extra yards. The one silly tape thing I will say is that you talk about some quick shoulders.
Oh yeah. Let's hear about the quick shoulders.
This guy's some of the quickest shoulders.
I've never about shoulders before.
He's got some of the quickest. like the shoulder jukes. There's this the shoulder misdirection.
1:37 a.m. on the East Coast. We are inventing scouting terms on this podcast.
No, seriously, you go back and rewatch it. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's crazy, but this is pretty difficult not to be excited about. Because that was the one thing missing from this offense. They could not get settled at running back, and that was really bad for fantasy. This should be like a league-winning type fantasy running back in that Chiefs offense, and now we've got ourselves some upside in the Chiefs backfield again.
And Hayden, because of that, because in some ways this might have been the biggest hole on the Chiefs roster, and it was at pick number 32. Isn't it okay to draft a running back in the first round at this end of the draft?
This puts me in a tough spot because I want to say no, but if there is ever a situation, it's when you have 20 of 22 starters returning and you can fill a need as a pass-catching running back, and that's what he is. He is the pass-catching running back, and he's so elusive. He can run between the tackles as well. I don't want to undersell him here. He's got those quick shoulders, and Yes, I mean, he's just an all-around player. The question is he's going to be like a top 5 running back in our rankings? Like, he's going to be close to that for me. I mean, the dude is just spectacular to watch.
I mean, the potential's there, and I was so locked in on him getting drafted by the Patriots that I didn't even think about the Chiefs, but it makes so much sense. I mean, I believe he set like an SEC record or a long-standing time when a running back hadn't caught 55 passes, and he did that last season. He was split out in the slot. He was split out wide. And Pat, to your point, he has this innate ability to make the one-man miss right in front of him, like this incredible lateral explosion and agility. And he's not going to reel off, 20-plus yard runs over and over and over again. But he's going to make the first man miss, and he's going to pick up yards after contact. And I'm sure Andy Reid is missing that type since Kareem Hunt. I mean, look what Kareem Hunt did in his rookie year. And going back to Brian Westbrook, like that type of talent is there here with CEH. And I am so excited to see it in 2020.
You made a few just really like crucial points there. He's not going to get these like
thank you
super, super long touchdowns, but not only is he going to catch every layup and get the 4 or 5 yards in the dump off, but almost every time he'll add 2 to 3 yards to that after making the first guy miss. And he's a very, very exciting prospect to see plugged into this kind of offense.
Damian Williams has 10 total touchdowns as a playoff savior the last 2 seasons. But in 6 years into his career, and we haven't seen him handle more than 111 carries. We haven't seen him even get 40 targets, let alone 35 catches. So the vested just isn't there. And I don't think it's immediate day one, Helaire, every down running back, right?
No,
even DeAndre Washington.
I think there's a chance.
Dude, we saw it with Kareem Hunt. Kareem
listening.
Hunt got it in the preseason.
I'm listening.
It's going to depend on with the coronavirus thing, but if there's any semblance of a training camp, they get 4 weeks in there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is so much better than Williams.
He was my number 1 running back. I don't know where he was for you, Hayden, but I mean, thank the Lord. We don't have to deal with LaShawn McCoy anymore. We don't have to deal with Damian Williams. No, we don't. We get a featured. No, we get a featured back in the best offense in the NFL, and that is money. That is
I would not get
money.
ahead of myself on that. I would not immediately. I still wouldn't be shocked to see him kind of treated as a pass catching back only to begin his career, at least the first month or 2.
Okay, how can we wager this? Can we say that the most touches in the first 4 games of the season goes to blank running back on the Chiefs? Either Edwards-Helaire or another running back, and you would be on another one.
I don't know about touches, maybe carry. I don't know. Yeah, that would be tough. It's too early.
Touches. If he leads in touches, that means he's the number 1 back in the offense.
I just wouldn't be surprised if they did not think he was quite ready to be the lead early down back. I think he's shown that he could be.
But Pat, he's coming out of an offense that Joe Brady, who's now an offensive coordinator, who picked it up from the New Orleans Saints. Like he is used everywhere. Like, to me, he is absolutely ready. And the transition from running back from college to the NFL is probably the easiest in the position in college football.
The other 2 are obviously DeAndre Washington, who they signed, played at Texas Tech in college with Patrick Mahomes, and who we mentioned earlier, Darwin Thompson, who is a 6th-round pick. So not nearly a first-round pick like Helaire. So basically the question is more touches, Damian Williams or Helaire in week 1. And I'm happy if I have him in Dynasty League. I don't know if I can put my foot down right now, though. I'm just happy we got it. I'm going to do the political answer. I'm happy we got it.
Darrell Williams. Sorry.
Darrell Williams. I forgot about that. Darrell Williams is a good player, too.
71 missed tackles forced last year for Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah,
to go along, and I was surprised by this, 21 carries of 15-plus yards for CEH. All right, that does it for the first 32 picks of round 1. Gentlemen, we did it. Thank you for letting me spiel, go and rattle off. Pat, I loved your notebook. Love you sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it tonight. Thanks so much. Daigle and Hayden, you did a good job too. Everyone out there, we are still blurbing, and these guys, especially Hayden and Daigle, all draft picks, every single player, 1 through like 255, I think it is.
It is 255 this year.
Through the weekend, so go and check out Rotoworld throughout the weekend. Also, I know that I have the best available prospects up. I know Hayden Winks is going to write a mock draft. I know Patrick Doherty has a column to write as well. We'll have content on Saturday. Plus, we're having instant reaction videos up on the website. And then we'll have a podcast for you on Monday morning. I think that covers it, gentlemen. Pat, John, Hayden, thank you so much. Everyone out there, we will talk to you all soon, and up the villa.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.